Hey guys, I hope you're as excited as I am to get into part 2 today. To recap part 1, we focused on the core concepts that underlie color management and ACES, and then we explored the way these concepts are applied inside Resolve to create our color transformation pipeline. And now that we understand these basics, we're going to shift gears and talk about workflow. What's the best way to set up an ACES grading environment that provides for optimal efficiency, problem solving, and creativity? Let's check it out. Okay, so let me show you guys how I like to set up my ACES projects to keep things as simple as possible while still leaving me the flexibility to deal with the problems we sometimes encounter in color managed workflows. We're going to see one example of these kind of problems later on in this video. But I want to start by building out my color pipeline, just like we did in part 1, only I'm going to do it slightly differently today. We're still going to use nodes and we're still going to use the ACES Transform OpenEffects plugin, but we're going to place them so that they're out of our way until we need them. So let's start from the input transform stage and work our way out to our output transform. If you guys remember from part 1, all of the shots in this timeline are Arri Alexa, except for one. This shot right here, shot number 13. So to set up our input transforms in the way I'm describing, where they are at hand but out of the way, we're going to take advantage of Resolve's group function to do this. Now, there are a number of different ways to use Resolve's group function and a number of different reasons why you might want to, but today we're going to use it to organize things by input color space. So there's going to be one group for each input color space. In this case, that means 2. There's going to be a group for Arri and a group for Rec 709. So if I hit Command A to select all of these clips, and then I Command click on shot number 13 to deselect it, I'm going to right click on one of these thumbnails here and say add into a new group. And we'll call this group Alexa, because this is going to be all of our Alexa material. Next, let's go to shot number 13, right click on it, do the same thing, and we're going to call this one 709. This just so happens to be a lonely group of 1, but of course we could have as many shots in this 709 group as needed to go in there. So I've now created my groups for each input color space. And let's go back to shot number 1 here, and you're going to notice that where before I only had 2 of these little dots up above my node graph, one for clip and one for timeline, which we're going to go to in a moment, I now have 4 dots because in addition to clip and timeline, I have group pre-clip and group post-clip. And these are exactly what you'd expect. They allow us to make adjustments that hit every single shot in the group, either before the clip level or after the clip level. And in our case, we're creating our input transform, and we want that to be the very first thing that hits our image, so the group pre-clip section is perfect for our needs. So I'm going to go to that section, go to my OpenEffects, find my ACES transform, and drop it onto this empty node here. I'm going to say Alexa for my input, and I'm going to say ACES CCT for my output, just like we did in part 1. And I'm going to label this in, keep things nice and legible and organized. So now I have my input mapping set up for all of my Arri Alexa shots in this timeline, which as we know is all the shots except for one. So all I need to do to finish setting up the input mapping of everything is go here to shot number 13 and set up a different input mapping, because remember, this is Rec 709. So you'll notice that my group pre-clip section is empty again because I'm in a different group. So anything I do here at the group pre-clip level is specific to the group that I am in. And that's a good thing because we want to do something different here. So I'm going to take another ACES transform, drop it onto this empty node. And in this case, I'm going to say Rec 709 for my input. And for my output, we're going to say ACES CCT. Once again, going to label that in. And we've now successfully input mapped all of our material in this timeline. Everything has been mapped into our working space. And now all we need to do is output map from our working space into our display space. And just like we want our input transform to be the very first thing that hits our image, we want our output transform to be the very last thing that hits our image. This makes the timeline section of our node graph the perfect place to put this output transform. So I'm going to create a new serial node here. I'm going to go to my OpenEffects and once again drop an ACES transform. Input transform will be ACES CCT because that's the working space which I am coming from. And output transform will be Rec 709 because that is the display that I am mastering on. And I'm going to call this node out because this is my output transform. And because this is here at the timeline level, it's hitting all of the shots in the timeline and it's hitting all of the shots in the timeline dead last. So we've now successfully set up the same color pipeline that we looked at in part 1, but we've got things organized a bit better for actual grading. And while I'm here at the timeline level, there's one more thing that I want to do, and that's to add my look into the mix. So once you've got your color pipeline set up, this is generally the juncture at which you would want to rough out your look for your entire timeline. So I'm going to prepend a node here, and I'm going to take a look that I've already built for this timeline and drop it on. This is just some basic contrast and then a little bit of halation for the specular highlights. And I want you guys to notice if I go full screen here and I turn this contrast layer, actually that's my halation layer. Let's go to contrast and I want to turn this on and off. And I want you to notice that one of the things that I'm doing in this contrast layer is kind of softening out my shadows. My shadows are a bit above 0 now. This is the main reason why I use ACES CCT instead of ACES CC. They are virtually identical color spaces, but for technical reasons, ACES CC is really difficult to get your signal off of the floor. It's really difficult to get above pure black if something is already pure black. So that's the fundamental answer for me as to why I might use ACES CC or ACES CCT. Anytime I want to get slightly softer shadows, I know that I'm going to want to use ACES CCT as my working space. Conversely, if I wanted to get really pure, deep shadows, I might instead opt for ACES CC. Give both a try. They both look and feel very similar until you start to manipulate things at the very bottom of the signal. So we've now got our overall sort of workspace set up for this grade. I've got all of my input mapping taken care of. I've got my output mapping set up, and I have my look applied across every shot in the timeline. But there's one more thing that I want to take a look at with you guys today, and that is shot number 4 here. Let's take a look at this shot full screen. I want you to notice these kind of fringy edges that we have going on here, this nasty bit of business that we see here. This is something that you're going to intermittently encounter when you're working in ACES, particularly when you have a source with a very large color gamut like this Arri Alexa material. What's happening here is we are mapping from Arri wide color gamut into ACES CCT. Arri wide color gamut is a very large color gamut. ACES CCT is a slightly smaller color gamut, and we have color that is high enough in saturation and high enough in luminance that the ACES CCT container can't hold it. And so we get this kind of fringing clipping going on here. And this is an instance where what I need to do to resolve the issue is actually get upstream of that initial input transform and modify the signal before it gets input. So we're actually going to create a third group for shots like this that need special attention. I'm going to right click on shot number 4 here. I'm going to say add into a new group, and we're going to call this outliers. And I want you to notice here that when I went into this new group and my input transform went off, the issue seems to resolve itself, but that's only because I don't have any input mapping and I'm incorrectly transforming my Arri Alexa using an ACES CCT output transform. So I'm solving one issue but creating another by foregoing that input transform. We need to do better than that. So here with my outliers, I'm actually not going to do anything at the group pre-clip level because I want to do everything manually on a per shot basis, because any shot that I put into this pile is going to need special attention and it may not need the same thing as any of its neighbors. So first things first, I am once again going to create an input transform, the same transform that we have in our main Arri group, but then we're going to try to deal with the issue that we're seeing here. So again, the issue is that we have a color that is high enough in luma and high enough in saturation that it is not fitting inside of my ACES CCT color space. So what I'm going to do to solve this is go down here to my curves and go to my Lum versus Sat, and I'm not going to try to reduce the luminance of these headlights or the edge around them. I'm going to try to reduce the saturation a bit, because to my eye, by the time it gets out to Rec 709, it's reading pretty neutral anyway. It doesn't actually look very saturated, so I'm not going to be losing anything if I desaturate these edges a bit. And I'm going to zoom in on the shot, and I'm going to sample this area here to get a feel for where on this luminance curve this is living. And then I'm just going to drop things down until the issue resolves itself, like so. And again, we're doing this upstream before that initial input transform, which isn't normally the way we would want to do things, but in this case, it's by far the best way to do things. If we try to deal with this issue after input transforming, it's going to be much trickier, and we're going to have to use much more aggressive tools to get the job done. And I also want to point out this is another advantage of doing your ACES workflow manually using nodes, because by default, if I were to set up this exact same color pipeline here in my project settings using my color science and going to ACES CCT, for example, and specifying input and output transforms, I would not have any access to my image upstream of the input transform or downstream of the output transform. And 9 times out of 10, that's fine. I generally don't want to manipulate my image at those junctures, but for these edge cases, for these outliers, that's exactly what I want to do. And this workflow gives me that flexibility while at the same time keeping most of the color pipeline, color management pieces out of my way and out of sight for my grading. So I hope this gives you guys a better sense for how I actually set things up practically when I'm working in ACES and when I'm getting ready to dive into a grade that I want to work through efficiently and have minimal problems with and be able to apply my creativity without feeling like I'm bumping into things left and right. And now that we've kind of got the table set here, we're ready to get into part 3, where we're actually going to talk about the grading process itself, the tools we use, and the way we go about making these images look great. I want you guys to notice that we're now 2 videos into this series and we've yet to start turning knobs. And that's not an accident. The way we set up our pipeline and our workflow have as much to do with our success as anything we do in the node tree. When we skip over or we guess our way through this process, we end up having to brute force most of our shots into a good place. But when we take the time to set the table properly, it pays dividends, shot after shot after shot. And in our next video, I'm going to show you just how simple things can be when we're standing on a strong foundation. See you then.